Welcome, fellow comic fans, to another edition of Wednesday Warriors, the show where I go through the weekly comic solicitations and give you my suggestions on what to buy. I'm your host, as always, Alex, and we've got ourselves a pretty jam-packed week this week. I actually had to even trim a few of these down because, to be perfectly honest, DC came out to play when it came down to the collected editions. So I picked out the ones that felt best to me, but even it's just been a really good week for comics if you're a big fan of trades for both independent and even a couple Marvel ones, which I always feel bad when I don't include them. And I know I've said this a couple of times because I don't want to give the impression it's like, oh, I'm just liking DC all the time and not Marvel. But, you know, I found two good Marvel things as well that I think would be worth your time and money. So let's get into them. First off, we're going to go DC because there wasn't exactly many other independent books besides Image that really jumped out to me. So we have ourselves a Vertigo book actually to talk about when it comes to DC, and that is Sweet Tooth Book 1 by Jeff Lemire. And this is, for all intents and purposes, the book that put Jeff Lemire on the map and gave him his big creative momentum that has led him into being the, acclaimed artist that he is today. I personally am not familiar with this story, but I've heard all the critical acclaim regarding it, and as far as I'm aware, Lemire both wrote and illustrated this himself, and from what I can tell, it seems to be a post-apocalyptic story about human and animal hybrids. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a bizarre read, but I've heard nothing but great things about this. This collects the first 12 issues and is going for $24.99, which that's a really good bargain, so definitely check that one out if you're into Vertigo titles, and especially if you're a fan of newer Jeff Lemire stuff and you want to try out some of his older works. Now for, I believe, the only single issue I have for recommendations this week, and it's just frankly a bizarre idea. It's kind of one of those Hanna-Barbera comics that DC puts out on occasion, and this one is just like, it's going to be hilarious, but I'm wondering if this is going to be like a really dark book, if this is going to be kid appropriate. I'm really curious because I have no idea what is going to happen with this one. It is Dastardly and Muttley, issue 1 of 6, written by Garth Ennis. Wow, Garth Ennis. Okay, so Garth Ennis is a big fan of doing war comics typically, so that's a pretty good fit there, but Garth Ennis' sense of humor can be it's really weird. Like, you'd have to read a Garth Ennis book to really understand his humor, but it can be really dark, and it can also be very crude at times. And I'm not sure if this is going to be a family book, or if this is something where they're just going to let him go completely off the rails with this. But this just sounds like such an off-the-wall pick that I have to see what Garth Ennis is going to do with Dastardly and Muttley. So I'm not sure if this is going to be for everyone, because Ennis books can, you're either really going to love it or it's going to really turn you off fast, and I get the feeling this is not going to be much different. But if you're a fan of Ennis, then this will probably be for you, most likely. And for the last DC book, we had ourselves a couple of Harley Quinn trades that were put out for this week, and I decided to pick the Harley Quinn hardcover deluxe edition by Carl Kessel and Terry Dodson, which I believe this collects the original mini-series by Harley Quinn, or maybe it wasn't ongoing. I'm not as familiar with it. I've always seen the trades for it. I've never picked it up, but it looks like it collects the first 8 issues, and I generally like Carl Kessel's writing. I believe he worked on Captain America Patriot miniseries back in the day, and that was one of my favorite comics to read as a monthly. Actually, even besides the writer, you also have Terry Dodson, and Dodson's an incredible artist. You basically have yourself 2 great reasons to pick up this comic, and plus, if you're a fan of Harley Quinn, you want to check out some of her more old-school stuff, this looks to be the book for you. It's collecting issues 1 through 8 again, and it's going for $29.99, which is admittingly a little pricey. Maybe $25 would be a little better for that, but since it is a deluxe hardcover, maybe oversized potentially. I don't have an idea of what the dimensions are for this one. But we'll see, I guess. There might even be some back matters. So, once again, fan of Harley Quinn, definitely check it out. Now, for my personal favorite, and this is going to be the picks with a caveat. It does say on the site, not verified by Diamond, so I'm not sure if that means that there's a chance it's not actually coming out this week. but I'll gladly talk about it again if that's the case. But looks like what's being solicited for this week is one of my favorite comics of all time. The Criminal Deluxe Hardcover Editions Volumes 1 and 2 are both coming out. And I get the feeling it's probably just going to be Volume 1 coming out. I bet you Volume 2 comes out in like a couple of weeks just to kind of put it off so that way you're not just putting two big, nice hardcovers out at the same time. But maybe they're going to do that. I'm not sure. Anyway, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, Criminal is a creator-owned title that Ed Brubaker worked on during his Marvel heyday, and it's essentially his more grounded Sin City, is how I always like to phrase it, because each series has a nice little mini story within it. It's basically 3 to 6 issue story, typically, and usually involves a different set of characters, but they all occupy the same world. And sometimes you'll see characters come and go throughout books, and it's this wonderful blend of dark crime dramas. You get yourself some more humorous ones on occasion, but you get these incredibly layered characters and these complex journeys, and it's some of my favorite comics I've ever read. Arguably, Brubaker's best comic, but that's sort of like choosing between metaphorical children for me, since Brubaker is my favorite writer. And then also you have Sean Phillips, who is just on fire with every single one of these volumes. So you have yourself two creators that are at the zenith of their power. And they're still there. That's the funny part. I mean, they've been working on this thing since 2008, maybe 2009, and they're still going strong with this. The first hardcover collects the first 3 volumes, and then edition number 2 collects volumes 4 through 6. And each one retails for $49.99, and looks like it's going to include various back matter from the single issues, I believe. It says selected articles, behind the scenes, painted covers, and much more. Now that I'm looking through the solicitation for the Volume 2 Deluxe Edition, it may be including the Volume 7 content as well. The solicitation is a little vague on this, but what it's saying exactly is it is collecting The Bad Night, The Sinners, and The Last of the Innocent miniseries, along with short stories. That could mean they're collecting Volume 7, but they didn't include the Volume 7 subtitle from the recent trade, so you may want to keep an eye on that just to make sure. That sounds like it's going to be collecting the Volume 7 stuff, but I don't know. The good news, though, is if they don't collect the Volume 7 stuff, that could be indicative that we're going to get some more Criminal content in the future, and believe me, I am always down for some more Criminal stories, whether it's as another mini or some more short stories. That is more than fine by me. So either way, that's a win-win. And obviously, I highly recommend everyone pick up these deluxe editions, if whether you are a longtime Criminal reader or someone looking to try out this series for the first time. Trust me, these are well worth the purchase. These are excellent stories from two of the finest crime creators in the comics medium. I know that sounds a little pricey up front. Maybe you might not necessarily want to, drop $100 right away on both of them. But I bet you, if you tried out the first one, you're definitely going to get hooked. Believe me. And even if maybe like the $50, cover price for Volume 1 may be a little steep, I kind of get that a little bit, even though I know they're going to pack it with content. Then if that's the case, I would recommend trying out at least the first trade, because trust me, this is one of the best comic series around, and I will never stop singing its praises. And now we have ourselves 3 books left, and I'll just rattle through these quickly since I just went on a Criminal binge. We do have another Image book to talk about, and that is Extremity Volume 1 from Daniel Warren Johnson. To be honest, I am not very familiar with Daniel Warren Johnson like in his other creative works, but I've been seeing various pieces of artwork from him for the last couple months, and he has just demonstrated that he is an incredible new talent for this medium, or maybe he's been around for a while and I just haven't noticed, but this guy is just incredible with his artwork. And if it seems like it looks like he's writing it too, so I will be very curious to see how this book turns out. And it looks like it's labeled as a fantasy book, but it also says it has the intensity of Mad Max. So I will, maybe not this week given the Criminal books I'm going to be picking up, but it's definitely going to be on my radar soon. And it's collecting Extremity issues 1 through 6, and it is going for $16.99, which that's a fair deal. That's about the amount of content you get in a DC book, and that's more than fair for Image as well to do on occasion. I would recommend at least flipping through it, seeing if it, is to your taste, and I'm sure that if you do try it out, it'll be worth the purchase. And last, we have some Marvel comics to talk about, and this one is something I've always heard great things about. I haven't personally read it yet. Maybe this will be the capacity I choose to read it in. But something I've been hearing for years is that the Planet Hulk storyline is one of the best comics that Marvel put out in the 2000s. And looks like it has a bunch of creators that have worked on this to varying capacities. Looks like the established list of creators on here are Greg Pak, J. Michael Straczynski, Daniel Way, Peter David, Brian Michael Bendis, Mike McKone, Aaron Lopresti, Alex Maleev, amongst a bunch of other creators. And let's see, what's this all going to collect? I was kind of curious to see if it goes into the World War Hulk stuff too, but okay. Looks like this goes into the storyline of, looks like Hulk does something really bad, and eventually the various members of the Illuminati jettison him into space where he's supposed to go alone, but he goes into, I guess, a prison colony or something where he gets forced to fight in the gladiatorial games, and I think he eventually becomes the warlord of that planet. I remember I think he is in charge because of World War Hulk stuff, but apparently this stuff is amazing, and looks like it's collecting a bunch of comics. So it looks like Fantastic Four 533 to 535, Incredible Hulk 88 to 105, Giant Size Hulk number 1, What If Planet Hulk Gladiator Guidebook, material from Avengers Illuminati, and Amazing Fantasy, the 2004 edition, number 15. Didn't know that Amazing Fantasy got another series in the 2000s. That's kind of interesting. Anyway, looks like that gives a nice smattering of content, and it's going retail for $100, which is perfectly reasonable for the amount of content put into there. And looks like that's just a really good spot to read that storyline if you haven't already. And finally, we've got ourselves Iron Fist Volume 1, The Gauntlet, from Ed Brisson, Mike Perkins, and with covers by Jeff DeCall. And for this series, this is a story that takes place before Corey Andrews' Iron Fist miniseries that's coming out on Comixology now. At least I believe it's coming out beforehand. I think that's how it was billed anyway. Either way, though, I don't think you have to have read the Corey Andrews stuff to appreciate it. It pretty much gives you everything you need to know in the first issue from what I've read of the first issue. Basically, Danny's kind of a little bit more aimless at this point, and he is entering into a martial arts tournament just to kind of find his place in the world again. And it's, kind of a deadly, Enter the Dragon style martial arts tournament, from at least the way that the first issue of what I've read billed it as. I haven't read the other ones, but I'm definitely going to be picking it up here since Iron Fist is arguably my favorite Marvel superhero right now. And this is collecting issues 1 through 5 for $15.99, which is a really fair price in my opinion. And you also got Ed Brisson, who did a really good job with the violence from Image, which I reviewed on this site. And I really enjoyed Mike Perkins' time on Captain America, so I think that should be a good pairing to tell a really cool Iron Fist story. And that is the show for this week, and hope you guys found enough things to pick up. I certainly did. And let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see some more comics and video games content. And, well, thank you once again for your time, and I will catch you guys again next week.